You can't pour into other people if you are unfulfilled. You as parents can't provide for your family if the two of you are unfulfilled.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go.
It's the first 2 weeks of a brand new quarter, which can only mean one thing. Be a Maker School is open for enrollment. So what exactly is Be a Maker School? It's an online course platform specifically for Western trades. You can learn from home and at your own pace and join a community of makers and entrepreneurs who can support you as you build skills and confidence in your newfound hobby or career. Be a Maker School offers courses in equine photography, cinch making, rawhide and leather braiding, silversmithing and engraving, leatherwork and tooling, and then there's also a business course called The Business of Making, where I am one of the instructors. That course specifically details all of the business aspects behind being a maker. Different sales channels, shipping, marketing, website, branding, email correspondence, goal setting, and a number of other topics. As I mentioned earlier, Be a Maker School is only open for enrollment for the first 2 weeks of every quarter. So if you're interested now, it's definitely worth checking out. Otherwise, you have to wait another 3 months. You can grab all of the info at beamaker.school. Again, that website is beamaker.school. I can't wait to hear how you have inspired and fostered the maker that is inside of you. I am coming at you today with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. I am sitting down with Sara Burks. Sara and I have known each other for years and years now. We have worked together at the Boutique Hub, where Sara is currently the Director of Partnerships and Education. And because of that, we have been able to develop a close friendship. And Sara and her husband, Jacob, are both two people that Justin and I really look up to and admire. And one of the reasons that we admire them so much is because they have raised two of the best children that I've ever met in my life. Brady and Lainey are both in their 20s. They have long left the nest, if you will, and they really are the definition of what a parent hopes their kids will turn out to be. They are incredibly successful. They are kind. They are smart. They take part in athletics and extracurriculars, and they are just like the complete package. And as a parent, I want to be able to raise my children to have that same confidence and skill set and abilities that those two girls have. And so today, Sara and I are going to talk all about parenting, which is a conversation that we have not yet had on the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Sara as much as I enjoyed having this conversation with Sara. I truly could have talked to her for a whole other hour just because she is such a wealth of knowledge. There's still so many questions that I have that I want to ask her, so we may have to bring her back for another round. But without further wait, here we go. Welcome to the show, Sara Burks. Sara Burks, welcome to today's episode of the podcast. I genuinely don't even know where to start with you. You are a great friend. I worked with you for a number of years, and now I feel like we have been able to continue that relationship as peers, and kind of, you're a mentor to me. I'm definitely not a mentor to you, but I'm really excited to get to share today's episode because we are going to talk about a specific topic that maybe people are not necessarily expecting us to. But before we get into that, I do want to open it up today by having you give us a little bit more insight as to who you are, your involvement in agriculture and in rodeo. You have been a business owner and kind of where you're at now.
Yeah. Well, Jessie, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since I got the email. So I say, you must say you're not a mentor, or I'm a mentor to you, but you couldn't be a mentor to me. What? Because you're so much younger than me. But I do. I look up to you and everything you're doing in the industry, and you're a light in all the things you touch. So this is an honor for me to be here. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit more about me. Gosh, I'm just a rural farm kid from Southwest Wisconsin. Grew up on not a dairy farm, just a cash crop farm. We raised beef cattle and rodeoed all the time, growing up. And I was the kid that when school let out in May, I did not get to go back to town until September when school started again. That was my livelihood growing up. And through all of that, really had a love, a deep passion for just all things pretty, right? Whether it was flowers or clothing and accessories, all those things. And as I got older and thought about really what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I started to study retail and went into retail merchandising and ended up getting, weirdly enough, a landscape architect degree, because that's a different story, but I had to kind of shift gears due to a rodeo scholarship that I received. And anyway, then, kind of just took off from there, owned a store for many years and have just a huge passion for helping people. And so that led me to you, Jessie, at the Boutique Hub when we worked there together. And here I am. I'm still at the Boutique Hub helping retailers as the director of education and partnerships, and still get to dabble in all the rodeo stuff and farm life, because that's just a big part of who I am at the core.
Well, there are so many ways that we could take today's conversation, but I invited you here for a very specific reason, and we had kind of chatted about this earlier, but I am obviously really impressed by you and your husband, Jacob. Both Justin and I are. You guys really are two of the best people that we have ever met in life. You guys are you're responsible and you work hard and you're very godly and you're kind and you guys are great parents and you're both known for being great leaders and you're both very handy in the arena. The list goes on. And your daughters, Bridie and Lainey, are two of the most impressive young adults that I have ever met. And I do not say that lightly. And we know that raising kids is something raising great kids doesn't just happen. It is hard. And it's something that if you do it right, you have to put a lot of intention into. And raising kids is absolutely the hardest job that any of us will ever have, especially in this day and age. So that's why I brought you here, is to talk about parenting, because I know that a lot of our listeners are in that same boat, whether their kids are just born a couple of days ago and they are entering the parenting waters for the first time, or they have kids who are high schoolers and they've never necessarily dealt with the situations that they're in now, or their kids have, like yours, are no longer at home and you're still parenting and, worried about your kids, whether they are with you or they are not. And so I just want to dig into that today. So how have you navigated that over the last 20 years? Because your girls are now graduated. Before you ever had kids, though, you were a college rodeo coach in Durant, Oklahoma. What did you learn about kids and about leadership before you ever even had kids? Let's start there.
Oh my gosh, the best birth control ever. Be a college rodeo coach. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody that's been ever college rodeo is oh yeah, I can see how she'd say that. But oh my gosh, I guess it goes back to, when Jacob was rodeoing all the time. He was rodeoing professionally when I was coaching. And so we were very busy, and having a family was something that was important to both of us. He was born and raised in Arkansas. I was born and raised in Wisconsin. And it was something that, we talked a lot about, we prayed a lot about, and we really confided in some other, I would say, mentors, right? Other moms and dads that we knew, and we're oh my gosh, okay, their kids are well behaved. What's actually happening here? How is this working? How do we have kids and plan for this, right? And I had a very wise woman from our church just say, Sarah, you and Jacob are your family. You're the center, you're the nucleus. And when you have kids, they will rotate around you. You don't rotate around them. And that was one of those things that we kind of sat back and thought, oh my gosh, we can see families that rotate around their kids. And then we can see families that have kids that are born into a family that adapt to what they're doing in that family life. And we could totally see the difference. And so we started from the very beginning in the nursery or in the hospital when we had Bridie, and just kind of set some boundaries and just said, it's Jacob and Sarah, and Bridie's the addition. And she was going to live the life that we were living, right? We didn't want to completely change our life 100% around her. Yes, she's a newborn baby. Our life was going to change. But at the same time, She got in the car seat and went to all the rodeos. I mean, it wasn't like, well, I don't think we can drive 12 hours because we have a newborn. It was, well, we're entered in this rodeo, we're going. Or we're heading back to Wisconsin, we're going. We're not going to adjust that part of our life just because we had a newborn.
Oh, I think that is such important advice too. And even when it comes to putting your relationship first, I've always thought a lot about like you and your husband, your spouse are the core of the family. If you don't put that relationship first, again, aside for safety, like if your kids are in danger, then yes, you obviously need to put them first and their safety first. But as far as relationships go, you and your spouse need to come first and then your children, because it's kind of like pouring out of an empty cup, right? Like you as a mother, you can't pour into other people if you are unfulfilled. You as parents can't provide for your family if the two of you are unfulfilled.
Amen to that. And, I am a child of a divorced family. Jacob is not. And so, bringing in those two dynamics into our relationship, plus the geographical differences of being raised in Arkansas and Wisconsin. I mean, let's just get that out there. There's definitely going to be those struggles, but we had to commit to that. And not only did we have to commit to that personally, but we basically had to tell our families, like, this is the way we want to raise the kids. And with that, I mean, it went down to everything from when it was time for Sarah and Jacob to go ride horses or sit on the couch together. If it was time for Bridie to take a nap, Bridie took a nap in Bridie's bed in her nursery. She didn't take a nap on my lap. She didn't take a nap, where it was like in a car seat next to us. If we wanted quiet time or we had something we were going to go do, right? Like we had colts to ride, we had all those things. He was training a lot of bulldog and horses at the time. And it wasn't that, some people was like, I can't believe you would neglect her and, have her lay down for naps at certain times every day. And I said, well, it was a schedule because we had to schedule ourselves on, with livestock and all the things. And so there was times that we fed her, there was times that we played with her, and there was times that she slept. And she learned really fast that she knew when it was time to eat, just like your cattle come to the trough, just like your dog's ready to eat. Bridie was like, okay, I'm awake. It's feeding time. And if she cried, you knew it was feeding time. I didn't have to wonder, is she tired? Is she ornery? Is she whatever? It was like, oh, nope, she's crying. She needs to eat. So we started that schedule right off the bat. And with that, I think that morphed into how we raised both the girls, because our girls are 12 months and 12 days apart. So surprise, all of a sudden we're going to stay in baby land for a couple years. So we had to have that schedule, right? And with jobs and all the things, but then it turned into that's how we continued on as they were toddlers. And then as they were, adolescents and teenagers, is there was certain times that just meant this is what we do at certain times of the day. And gosh, it was always a joke around the house when people would just be hanging out and all of a sudden Bridie or Lainey would pout and they'd go put themselves in timeout. They knew where the timeout spot was, right? And I don't say this stuff to think like my girl, none of us were perfect, but we really tried to set boundaries, and the word no was used in our house. And it wasn't just the word no. A lot of times it was no because this, right? Like we tried to explain why this was no and why we were saying yes to certain things. As long as we stayed really consistent with that, I felt like the girls, they understood their boundaries and they tested them, right? They tested them just like any other kid would, but quickly they started to learn just how this whole system was going to work, because it was a system, everything about it. You look back and it's not everything was calculated, but I don't want it to sound like everything was calculated, but you really did, it allowed you to still not run around crazy. Like, do I have time for this? Or I hope I get this done today. And, setting those boundaries and where everybody was on the same page and communicating that, it really did help, because you know what it's like, especially rodeo wise, it's hard to juggle it all. And you do have to make those times. You have to set those boundaries, and they have to understand there's expectations and there's rules. I know that sounds stiff.
No, I think that's perfect. And then another thing is, you set those boundaries and then I don't want to say reward, because that's not the right word, but you are setting a boundary so that you and Jacob can go do whatever it is that you need to do, whether it is for personal fulfillment, whether it is, to make sure that there are lights overhead and a roof over your head and there's food on the table, whatever it may be. But then when it's time for your kids, they need your undivided attention, just like the job needs your undivided attention and your spouse needs your undivided attention and, your friends and yourself need that. And I think that's another thing that is probably more prevalent in the last, decade, would you say, where now because of our phones and social media and all of these things, like, do we really give our children our undivided attention when they are in that phase? And I'll tell you what, like, here I'm asking you this question and I know I am a sinner in that category. Like, it's something that everybody, even somebody who does it so fabulously, like, we can all be better at it. But I think that is another thing. Like, if you are going to demand boundaries, then you also need to set the boundaries to where you are giving that undivided attention back to your children when it is their time.
Yeah. And I think, that same lady that told us about you guys are the center of your marriage and your kids, they're adapting to that. She also she said, when your kids see mom and dad together and as one, it gives them that confidence, right? It just internally, they're thinking everything is going really smoothly. If mom and dad start to argue or they start doing things their separate ways, the kids, it's like that triangle, right? Like, do I go closer to this one or do I go closer to that one? And they feel pulled. And kids, it's natural. It happens. And so the more the mom and dad can be on the same page, and I'll be honest, it was very, very rocky. It was tough. Like, there I am in Oklahoma coaching 2 kids, 15 hours away from my family. At the time, my mom was very sick and Jacob was rodeoing a lot and he was gone and not always winning and money was tight and everybody's listening is like, oh my gosh, I've been there. I hear you, and I was still wanting to rope some. And so I'd load up 2 kids in a double stroller with a, bumper pull trailer and I'd haul off to some little rodeo and try to rope and ask somebody to watch my kids while I roped and, the stress of all of that. And so when you got home, you had to really kind of dial it back in and set boundaries for yourself and say, hey, Sarah, you're the one that said, yeah, go. You're the one that wants him to go chase this dream. So you can't berate him, just because it's heavy on you. So that was a checkpoint for us as well. And, we weren't always the best at it. So as they got older, we had those responsibilities to be true to that. Like, we're married, we're in it together. And then you enter in, fast forward a number of years, like you just said it, like the cell phone situation. So we don't rodeo near as much as we used to. We could say time and like phones have taken over that extra time. whatever it is in our lives, you're going to have something that's going to demand your attention. Yeah, I laugh because I think cell phones are like the adult pacifier that you just, in that pause moment of, I don't know what to do with my hands. You're like, oh, let me look at my phone. Or I don't know what to do in this situation. I have 5 minutes. Let me just look at my phone. And next thing you know, it sucks you in. And I always used to say rodeo would suck you in too. But it's something like that you do have to have boundaries. And if you're going to tell your kids, you don't get to be on your device all the time, then mom and dad don't get to be on their device all the time either. Hey, kids, don't text and drive. Then mom and dad, we can't text and drive either. And we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of it because we are able now to fit in literally 48 hours worth of stuff in our 24-hour day that we never used to be able to do before because of efficiencies and faster communication, all those kind of things. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And when you say yes to one thing, like your phone or your emails or your DMs or all of that, you're saying no to something else. And the sad part about it is a lot of times it is the kids.
It reminds me of that quote, Mother Teresa, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family, right?
Yes.
They do what example you set for them, that is what is going to take root within them. And I have recently, growing up, we had TV, but you had to go out, it was on an antenna and you had to go out with the pipe wrench and like change it when it was windy outside. And I remember somebody would yell out the window like hot or cold as the picture got fuzzier or better, right? You watched the news and basically that was it. So we read a lot. So my parents, I always saw them reading. So I was an avid reader growing up. Well, now fast forward, Justin and I have not been avid readers because of life. And that's a blame, right? Because if we wanted to be readers, we could make it a priority. But I want my kids to be readers because I know just how much that has helped in academics for me, how many doors that has opened. I feel like my vocabulary is better because I'm a reader. And I can tell in times when I have been reading books and I have not been reading books. But I'm never going to be able to tell my kid, hey, go sit down and read a book if they never see me reading a book. So I've tried to get better about that, especially because Jet is now a first grader. So he's in that phase of learning how to read and he has books sent home that he has to read. But I've really been trying to walk the walk, not just talk the talk in that sense.
Yeah. Monkey see, monkey do. And they want to be like mom and dad. They want to do all those cool things. And yeah, so if mom and dad sit down on the couch and hold each other's hand and show each other, that they care, that's a huge, huge thing for kids. If mom and dad pick up a book and start reading and they can settle themselves and be relaxed in their space and read, yes, that is one of my biggest regrets, that we did not do more with the girls. And so I can appreciate you saying that. And it's silly things like that when I talk to young moms and I'll say, read with your kids, put the phones down, read with them. They're like, read? Like, you have no idea. That is just one of my biggest regrets, that we did not do more of that.
No, and it's something that I can get better about as well. But I think that is just one example of many, as far as if we want to be great leaders for our children, then we really do. Like, we need to be the mirror that they are seeing those activities, because they're never going to take us seriously to go do those things if we just tell them, but they will if they're able to see us. But on that note, I know one of the things that your girls saw through you and Jacob, and still continue to, is just how active you are. And you had kind of talked about this. I mean, Jacob steer wrestled, you roped, you owned a business. Both of the girls, they competed in basketball and track and cross country, and they both rodeoed as well. They were wildly successful at any sport that they ever did in high school. They both continued on out of high school and both played basketball at the college level. So one of the things that I think is really important is, how did you manage to make time for everything? But in that, still make sure that the girls held themselves to the standard of like doing things in excellence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a big one. And so it's kind of funny, because you go back and it goes back to that whole idea of who we are as a family and what we do. And there was numerous times that I grew up and listened to my dad say, you're a Raggets, you don't quit. You're a Raggets, you whatever, fill in that blank, right? And you grow up and you're like, okay, Dad, fine. And then I would find myself saying those things to my kids. And, Lainey, she didn't love the horses. She liked to brush the horses. She liked to, do all that. But she had no interest for the longest time of going fast, to the point where my brother John one time goes, and we're at a little kid's rodeo, and he goes, how much longer do we cheer for Lainey trotting? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. And Lainey had just like, going to a rodeo or going to gather cattle or whatever it was. And she's like, why do we do this? And I said, because this is what we do. Like, I can't tell you you're gonna love it, but we have cattle, we have horses. This is our lifestyle. This is what your dad and I do. This is what my brother, his wife, my other brother and his wife, this is what we do. So, Lainey, this is what you're gonna do. And I'll be darned if she didn't all of a sudden, one summer, we're at this rodeo and the gate opens and I'm, helping, and I stand back and this kid blows by me and I was like, oh shoot, that was supposed to be Lainey. And I look up and I'm like, damn it, that is Lainey. Like, I don't know. She just all of a sudden takes off and that's her deal. And, she figured it out on her own. But I say that to go back and say, if we only do things our kids say they want to do, they're never going to learn to read. They're never going to tie their own shoes. They're never going to get out of bed at 6:30 in the morning or whatever time they need to get up to go do these things. So often I see parents like, well, my kid didn't really want to do that. I'm like, did your kid know? Like, at age 6, did Lainey know how awesome rodeo and that lifestyle and that friendship and all of the bonding she was going to do with her animals and with her rodeo friends? Did she know at 6 what that life was going to be? No, she didn't. So that's where Jacob and I were like, no, this is what we're doing. And you're going to try it. We're going to set you up for success, right? Like giving you the tools and the practice time. And because this is what we do. And if you reach a point where you've put in the effort and you're like, you know what, this is not my thing, then we're going to be able to say, okay, moving on. And that's kind of the way we were. They all took to the basketball, the rodeo stuff. They both realized on their own they were really good runners. And that kind of came with both those other events, right? Because running and goat tying and running and basketball, it was kind of an obvious thing. And so we celebrated that. We supported those things. But it was one of those things that we're like, we're not soccer folks. I don't like the game of soccer. No offense to any soccer listeners out there, but Jacob and I that's not our world we knew anything about. And so therefore, we didn't really say, we're going to stop doing what we're doing on a Saturday afternoon on the farm and drive you to town to play soccer just in case you might like it. There's other things that we do as a family that's what we're setting ourselves up for. So do we regret that? I don't think so. Our girls were very fulfilled in what they did. And we laughed. They took soccer and gym class. They had to pass some tests. They know the rules, right? And that's just one of those things they laugh about. Like, we could have been really good soccer players. I'm like, Yeah, you probably could have. Heck, you still can. Go play it, right? But as a family, we had to realize there's got to be some boundaries. We have horses, we have the land, we have the cattle, like I said. So therefore, that side was non-negotiable. This is what we're going to do as a family. Jacob coached basketball. And so therefore, it was an easy thing. The girls spent a lot of time growing up in the gym. We're in Wisconsin, so it's freezing in the winter. So what are you going to do? You're going to go inside. You're going to go to the gym. And that's where they spent their winters. And they got very familiar with the basketball and the game and loved it and, played in college. And so I guess I say all that to just want to say to the moms out there and the dads, like, you don't have to do everything. There's so many things out there for your kids to try. And you want to be able to, explore those things. But it's still at the end of the day got to fit in your schedule. It's got to fit in your lifestyle.
Oh, I could let you go on forever on that topic because that is something that I think is kind of a detriment to society now, is this idea that there are so many options at our disposal. Because if Sally tries dance and Sally gets 3 weeks into dance and, oh, I don't like dance, I want to do gymnastics. Well, then Sally can try gymnastics and Sally gets 3 weeks into gymnastics and it gets hard. And she says, oh, I don't like it. I want to try Taekwondo. And then we go 3 weeks into Taekwondo and, oh, it's getting hard. I don't like it. Like, you can't just let your kids, I don't like this anymore, because most often I think that kids say that because it gets hard. And if we all quit when it got hard, none of us would be where we are, right? Successful people, they have continued to move forward even when it gets hard, and they have continued to learn, and they've practiced, and they've gotten better. And then soon what was hard becomes easy. And if it doesn't, then okay, well, maybe Sally's not cut out for Taekwondo or, whatever it is. But I think that we don't make kids do hard things anymore.
Yeah. On that note, one of the biggest struggles as a parent is ever watching your kids fail. So as much as Sally might say, gosh, I love to dance, and you're up there watching Lainey, let's just say Lainey and Bridie, and we're talking about them, and they're going to listen to this and they're just going to be like, gosh, thanks, Mom. But they both did dance, right? And we're involved in music in school. We're in a very small school. So you're involved in everything, right? Like if there's a choir, if there's like whatever, you're doing it. And Bridie is the girl at our choir concert that is going to get a solo. She's going to sing. Lainey's first choir concert, she's in the front row and I'm in the audience. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's chewing bubble gum. She's literally chewing bubble gum at a choir concert. Everybody else is all prim and proper, standing, completely straight up and down, arms at the side. And there's Lainey chewing her gum. And she's in the class because it's a class. She's not in there because she has this love for, public singing. So what's Lainey do? She takes the gum out of her mouth and slowly squats down and puts it under the riser in the front row of the choir concert. And I'm sitting there thinking, somehow this is going to help her grow, right? Like she's learning something from this. And that being said, Jacob and I just embraced that. And to watch her be uncomfortable in a situation was so good for her. And it was so good for us because, another parent might have just said, singing's not really her thing. Let's pull her out of that. But it sure became part of her, you can correlate this when she had to do some public speaking and speech class in high school and all of these kind of things. And she volunteers and she does a lot of different things in front of people where she has to kind of face some fears and be prepared, right? Be prepared for the moment. And the lesson she learned that night, standing up there in front of all those people, realizing that she wasn't prepared, stuck with her. And I think that's just one of 1,000 examples I could give you about times, that we put our kids in positions that is uncomfortable. And as a parent, we have to let them work their way through it. We can't just give them the easy out. And that goes back to my dad saying, you're a ragus, you don't quit. So if you start something, you're finishing it. And if you say that, you've got to follow through with that as well. And, as a parent, they see you work hard. They see you struggle at home. They don't at the job. So that is one of those things that I learned real fast with my kids because they see the things that the public sees, right? Social media, all the videos that are put out in the boutique hub and whatnot. They see those things, but they don't see the struggles that I have. They don't see how many retakes I've done on a video, or they don't see, somebody blasting me on, I don't know, whatever it might be if I do something wrong. And so in their eyes, your kids grow up and think my mom doesn't make mistakes. My mom, she's so great at blah, blah, blah. And I even remember them saying something to me. I'm like, Mom, you've never done anything wrong. And I laughed. And I was like, why would you think that? And it's because we shield them from those things. So putting them in positions where it's a hard, struggles, right? Like a little adversity. They say the biggest adversity that our kids have is they don't have adversity. We take that from them. So putting them in those positions, but also verbalizing like our struggles, things that we did when we made mistakes growing up, or whether we got a speeding ticket, or whether we got an F on a test in high school or in a class, or whatever it might be. Humanizing ourselves as parents is really, really important. And that helps put it all in perspective for your kids too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I think too, you bring up the point of we don't make it hard for our kids. Like we don't let them face adversity. And I see a lot of parents who they will do anything to fight battles for their kids.
Yes.
And in my mind, my job as a parent is not to fight my children's battle for them. It is to prepare them to fight their own battles. Like, yes, if push comes to shove, again, if their safety is in question or, some kind of issue where, bullying or whatever that is, then yes, I'm absolutely going to come to their aid. But my job as a parent is to equip them with the skill set and the confidence and the abilities that they need to have in order to go fight their own battles. And they're never going to be able to do that if they don't face adversity. And if we're not like, you can't be that helicopter parent.
No. So one of my favorite things, and the girls would probably, as they're listening to this, or another mom friend of mine, they're probably knowing what I'm going to say already. But from a very early age, I would say to my kids, figure it out. You have, and I'd fill in the blanks. Like, I remember one day I was sick and the girls were young. And I mean, young when I say like probably 3 and 4, 4 and 5, something like that. I was exhausted. I was sick. I don't know what it was, but mom needed to lay down. I just needed a break. And they both kept coming into the bedroom and they just wanted this and they wanted that. And I sat up and I said, figure it out. You know how to run the VCR. You know how to pour a bowl of cereal. You know how to soothe yourself, lay down yourself. You know how to do these things. Figure it out. And they both, I remember looking at me just like, okay, all right. And I just coined that with them. I'm like, just figure it out, ladies. Like, this is not so hard. I'm not able to do this for you right now. I'm not going to do this for you. So what resources do I have? What gifts did God give me that I can just go figure this out? And so often they would. And they got so much better at that as they got older. But this goes back to even when I taught at the university, kids would come into my class and say, Mrs. Burks, how do you want me to do this assignment? And I'd say, well, it's an entrepreneur class and you want to be an entrepreneur. So can you figure it out? And, I'm asking you to write a mission statement for your so-called business. How should I do that? I'm like, what do you want the mission to be for your business? Well, what do you think it should be? I'm like, I'm not going to give you the out here. I'm asking you to figure this out. Like, figure it out, people. And I think sometimes parents have I don't want my kid to get it wrong, or I'm showing a love language by just doing things for them all the time. And so then these kids aren't raised with the, deductive reasoning skills and the logistics skills and just that ability, or even the reality of, hey, if I got it wrong and I learned from it, it was still a win. Like, okay, but I still did it. And I did it myself.
And in reality too, like done is better than perfect, because we've all seen things that, oh, well, it's not perfect. It's never going to get done. No, just get it done. You can always perfect it later, but perfect is way different than perfect. Perfect does not exist. Perfect, it's something we're always continually striving after.
Yeah. Yeah. So figure it out. That was just one of those things as I saw, Bridie, we're in Wisconsin, and Bridie gets this opportunity to go out to Idaho to play college basketball. And people were like, how's she going to go to Idaho? Like, that is so far away from Wisconsin. How does she feel equipped to go do that? And I look back at all those things that we just empowered, our whole family empowered our kids to just figure it out and have confidence in themselves to make their own decisions. And yeah, has it been easy on her living that far away from home? I mean, no, that there's been those struggles and, we've had those phone calls but she has figured it out and she's thriving in Idaho and loves it. And you're probably saying, well, of course she is. Idaho's a great place. She knows who her resources are, right? Like, she figured it out and she knows, Jessie, she can call you and you're just a phone call away and a quick drive away if she needs something. And she has figured those things out that are going to make her situation and the best for her. Met an amazing man, married, They're having a wonderful life. Life is so good. Lainey, at the same time, she's at a university in Wisconsin playing basketball. There's challenges, there's ups and downs, there's all the things, but you have to figure it out. You can't just throw your towel in and throw the covers over your head and say, I'm just going to go back to bed for the rest of your life.
No, you definitely can't. You've got to get up and face the day.
Yeah.
And again, walking that walk as a parent and then also pushing them to do that themselves and not doing it for them, I think are two crucial pieces to that. Okay, let's go to the rapid fire round.
Ooh, okay.
What is the best piece of business or personal advice that you've ever been given?
This goes back to my mom. And my mom, personal advice, if I would say something, her response back was, of course you did. She didn't say, good job. She didn't say something that would infer like she was surprised in my accomplishments. She would always say something like, of course you did. Because to me, that was so powerful because she expected that of me and she knew I had it in me. If somebody would say something like, good job, that almost made me feel like, or it could have made me feel like they didn't know if I could do it. When she would say, of course you did, it almost made me feel like, wow, she had that confidence in me the whole time. And I should have that confidence in myself the whole time. And I will never forget. So where we live in the bluffs of the Mississippi, the hills are just super, super steep and rocky and all this stuff. And we were moving cattle one day and I needed to go up this ravine and I wasn't sure if I should, right? Like I was nervous, all this stuff. And my mom's like, we got to go. And she took off and I followed her and I got up to the top and I go, I made it. And she looked back. She's like, of course you did. And she's like, all right, let's roll. And that just stuck with me. And I have used that and I have heard her voice in my head so often on things that if I were doubting myself or anything like that, it's like, of course you did. God has set you up for all sorts of amazing things.
That is perfect advice, especially on the topic of parenting too, because I feel like that is definitely something that we can continue to instill in our kids. I love that. Okay. So that's the best advice you have ever been given. Now we're going to flip the tables, turn them, I should say. If you could give people advice, you knew that they would take it to heart, what would it be?
I feel like I may have said this already in this conversation, but fail and learn. There's so much more to learn in failing. Winning feels good, but we're not learning when we're winning. We're learning when we fail. And so I say this to people all the time in my coaching classes and things like that. I'll say, if we're not winning, we're learning and have power in that. So go ahead and fail. Try some hard things. Try some things and just go ahead and fail and learn from it.
Oh, yes. That is great advice. Okay. If you could go to dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
I'm going to say my mom. She passed away way too young. And I, as almost approaching 50, there are so many things I want to hear from her and just things I didn't get a chance. I wasn't mature enough, I think, to even ask her some of these questions when she was alive. And so it was definitely my mom.
Okay. Can we talk about the fact that somehow you are almost 50? So we're going to skip to the next question. Sara, you basically look like you're 25 and somehow you have children also in your 20s. I don't really know how the math is not mathing, but you really don't look a day over 25. What kind of a skincare regime? Like what type of products do we use here? Yeah. Give us some details.
Oh gosh. Okay. I've used Senegen's products for probably 16, 17 years now.
Okay. That's a secret.
Senegen's, yeah. So I used to sell that lip scent stuff in my store when I had my and I was never super in love with the lip stuff, but I love the skincare. Absolutely love the skincare. So yeah, that's all I use.
Okay. Well, great advice. I like that. See, that's why I asked those types of questions. Okay. What is a quote that you lead your life by?
Let's see. A quote that, you can't rationalize with irrational people. How's that one?
Yeah, I can see that would be applicable to life.
Yeah, it is. It's something I do. I live my life by because it's like you sit there and you're faced with a situation, you're faced with an email that comes in or a DM or something that comes in or whatever it might be. And you have to kind of sit back and say, is this person rational in their thought? Is this person rational? Like, are they taking all their stuff and just dumping it onto me in a very irrational way? Because that helps me identify how I'm going to respond or how I'm going to react or if I'm even going to let that sit on my shoulder, right? And absorb into me. So you cannot rationalize with irrational people.
No, and that's also super powerful in customer service too. Like you may just have to give an answer and it is what it is, but knowing deep down like, okay, I did nothing wrong here or whatever it may be. Okay, last question for the day, because I know you've got other things that you've got to go do, but let's talk about favorite things.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite book or podcast program, maybe like a product or a service, something that has changed your life and you just want more people to know about it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, of course, I'm going to say the Boutique Hub because as a boutique owner, I was a member of the Boutique Hub prior to then coming to work for the Boutique Hub. So I feel like any small business that is in the product-based sales just needs that community of support from what the Boutique Hub provides. So I think that's a life-changing business right there. Like in a podcast, something else I follow that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is a program called 3D coaching. And it's what I encourage you guys to kind of look into. So when I was coaching, I coached volleyball, I coached rodeo. And then as I'm coaching retailers and raising kids, I really look at raising kids as a lot like coaching. I realized real fast that the best coaches are the ones that coach on 3 levels. They coach the body, the physical side. They coach the mental side for the mental side of the game, the brain, all that stuff. But then they also coach the heart. So those 3 dimensions of coaching, and it ties back in a lot of biblical principles. And I'm a huge, huge fan. So yeah, check it out.
Okay. I wonder, Justin and we might have to take that up before T-ball starts this season because, we're such great little T-ball coaches.
You might need that for your pickleball plan too, Jessie. Just saying.
I know I do. I get my tail whipped by those old ladies. Oh, I mean, I am proof that you've still got to get out there and you've got to fail because you've got to learn to lose before you can learn to win.
You bet. You bet. Just put yourself out there. Have fun doing it. And that, like, laughter, it's so healthy. And I will say that is one thing as moms, sometimes we take ourselves way too dang serious, right? And we take life too serious. And at the end of the day, you might find yourself like, remember that rodeo that, was it Jet doing the stick horse race
oh, yes.
In there. And I remember like that was a big deal. And yes, there was a lot of lessons to be learned there and everything. But at the end of the day, I remember you just laughing and you're like, we are going to look back at this and enjoy this. And you have, but some other moms that would have been like devastating and they wouldn't have taken their kid back to that position or that situation. And so I love that I remember going through that with you and kind of walking through that whole valley.
Oh my gosh. I will quickly tell that story for those of you who are maybe new here. So it would have been the very first time that Bridie came to visit us when she had moved from Wisconsin to Pocatello to go play basketball at ISU. And it was in August and it was Jet's last rodeo of the year. And we had a big week. He had just started school that week. We had gone out every night to the pro rodeo that is local to us. So we had gotten back late. He had a babysitter one night. And then they also I think they stayed at my parents' house that night. And so basically like his whole schedule is out of whack in the last 3 days. Then we have to get up at, 6 o'clock to get to this rodeo so that we can start at 8 a.m. And he gets to the goat tail and tying and he throws a fit. He will not compete. And I get him off his stick horse and I spank his butt in front of everybody and I grab his arm. Actually, I think I grabbed him by the collar and I walked him to the car and I threw him in the car and we went right home. And I'm pretty sure Bridie, thankfully, she had seen this, whether it was with her sister or with herself, or like she had been in this situation personally. But I just remember being so embarrassed of how my kid acted. So then we came home and we practiced our goat tail and tying on the dog. And we got a good nap in and we had a little come to Jesus. And then we showed up at the rodeo the next day and we completed the task at hand. We untied the goat tail, but no, it is such a learning moment. And honestly, like in that moment there, I was so embarrassed. I was so mad at my kid, but I also learned a valuable lesson. Here it is. He's 4 years old. He just started preschool. He had 3 days of preschool that he's never been to before. Mom and dad go out late. He's got a babysitter one night. He goes and has a sleepover the next day. And then we expect him to get up and perform at the level we want him to at 8 a.m. at 4 years old. There is no way in hell. So ever since then, I know when there is a rodeo or, whatever it is, I put just as much effort into that to make sure that I'm setting them up for success. Because while he had the attitude and he didn't need to react that way, I also know that we didn't set him up for success either. So
yeah,
I learned a lot about that.
And this is another thing, a lot of times, especially with all the youth sports and oh my gosh, it's just never ending. And there's all these opportunities for kids. And I see parents say, I want my kid to have more than I did. And well, at the end of the day, I will also encourage you to say, Junior, you can't go to that tournament on Saturday because mom and dad have to work. And explaining that when mom and dad work, we make money. And when we make money, we afford this. And when we afford this, not only does it keep the lights on and put gas in the car and all that kind of stuff, it does eventually trickle down to be able to support this, whatever is Junior wants to go to. But Junior's ball tournament doesn't trump, loan payments or car payments or gas or lights on and all those kind of things. But kids won't get that if you constantly just say yes and say, oh no, mom and dad can not work on Saturday and come and help you. Or, we don't have to move cows that day. We can do it another day. And that's one of those things, like setting them up for success with their time, but also reality. The reality of it all, I think, is, as I give advice to moms, I just want to say, the power in the word no, and spend time with your family, do the tasks. Like, what are the things that move the needle in this family as a whole unit or this business, right? They've got to understand that and appreciate that, because if they are raised to just mom and dad say yes to everything, oh gosh, when it gets to the teenage years, that's going to be a real, real challenge.
No kidding.
Setting them up for success, not only with in your example there, but just also verbalizing, what it looks like to run this family. And, when mom and dad do go to work, what opportunities is that creating for the kids? And, they do have to understand that, because they can live in a very, just a sheltered world online and see all the beautiful things, but not understand the sacrifice unless we really have to present it to kids nowadays, I think.
Oh, well, that is the perfect way to end today's show. We could continue to go on for hours. There's so many questions I still have that I know people who are listening have as well. So we may have to have you back on for parenting round number 2, but I know that you've got a meeting to get to. So Sara, thank you so much for spending time with us today. You are such an inspiration, and this was an awesome episode, and I cannot wait for everybody to get to listen to this. If you just got finished listening to this, please do us a favor, share your biggest takeaway in your stories. Make sure to tag Of the West, tag Sara or myself. That is always so fulfilling to have you guys share those little bits and nuggets. Thank you guys. You can catch us back here next week with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. And until then, take care. We'll see you later.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.